So today I'm going to be reading the Tale of Despereaux, chapter 20 and 21. In the last chapter, Roscuro, the rat from the dungeon, had found his way upstairs, and he saw the king and the queen and the princess at a party. Chapter 20, A View from the Chandelier. You guys know a chandelier is like a really large light fixture, and it usually has lots of crystals and things on it. Sometimes it has light bulbs, but in older times it would have had candles, and it's really beautiful. It hangs in the middle of a room. There was in the banquet hall a most beautiful and ornate chandelier. The crystals that hung from it caught the light of the candles on the table and the light from the face of the laughing princess. They danced to the rhythm of the minstrel's music, swaying back and forth, twinkling and beckoning. What better place to view all this glory, all this beauty? There was so much laughing and singing and juggling that no one noticed as Roscuro climbed up a table leg and onto the table, and from there flung himself onto the lowest branch of the chandelier. Hanging by one paw, he swung back and forth, admiring the spectacle below him, the smells of the food, the sound of the music, and the light, amazing, unbelievable. Roscuro smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, a rat can hang from a chandelier for only so long before he is discovered. This would be true at even the loudest party. Reader, do you know who it was that spotted him? You're right. The sharp-eyed Princess P. A rat, she shouted. A rat is hanging from the chandelier. The party, as I have noted, was loud. The minstrels were strumming and singing. The people were laughing and eating. The man with the jingle cap was juggling and juggling. No one, in the midst of all this merriment, heard the P. No one except for Roscuro. Rat. He had never before been aware of what an ugly word it was. Rat. In the middle of all that beauty, it immediately became clear that it was an extremely distasteful syllable. Rat. A curse, an insult, a word totally without light. And not until he heard it from the mouth of the princess did Roscuro realize that he did not like being a rat. He did not want to be a rat. This revelation hit Roscuro with such force that it made him lose his grip on the chandelier. The rat reader fell, and alas, he fell right directly into the queen's bowl of soup. Chapter 21, The Queen's Last Words. The queen loved soup. She loved soup more than anything in the world, except for the Princess P and the king. And because the queen loved it, soup was served in the castle for every banquet, every lunch, and every dinner. And what soup it was! Cook's love and admiration for the queen and her palate moved the broth that she concocted from the level of mere food to a high art. On this particular day, for this particular banquet, Cook had outdone herself. The soup was a masterwork, a delicate mingling of chicken, watercress, and garlic. Roscuro, as he surfaced from the bottom of the queen's capacious bowl, could not help taking a few appreciative sips. Lovely, he said, distracted for a moment from the misery of his existence. Delightful. See, shouted the P. See, she stood. She pointed her finger right at Roscuro. It is a rat. I told you that it was a rat. He was hanging from the chandelier, and now he's in Mama's soup. The musicians stopped playing their guitars. The juggler stopped juggling. The noble people stopped eating. The queen looked at Roscuro, and Roscuro looked at the queen. Reader, in the spirit of honesty, I must utter a difficult and unsavory truth. Rats are not beautiful creatures. They're not even cute. They are really rather nasty beasts, particularly if one happens to appear in your bowl of soup with pieces of watercress clinging to his whiskers. There was a long moment of silence, and then Roscuro said to the queen, I beg your pardon. In response, the queen flung her spoon in the air and made an incredible noise. A noise that was in no way worthy of a queen. A noise somewhere between the neigh of a horse and the squeal of a pig. A noise that sounded something like neigh. And then she said, there is a rat in my soup. The queen was really a simple soul, and always her whole life had done nothing except state the overly obvious. She died as she lived. There is a rat in my soup were the last words she uttered. She clutched her chest and fell over backwards. Her royal chair hit the floor with a thump, and the banquet hall exploded. Spoons were dropped, chairs were flung back. Save her! Thundered the king. You must save her! All the king's men ran to try to rescue the queen. Roscuro climbed out of the bowl of soup. He felt that under the circumstances it would be best if he left. As he crawled across the tablecloth, he remembered the words of the prisoner in the dungeon. His regret that he did not look back at his daughter as he left her. And so Roscuro turned. He looked back, and he saw that the princess was glaring at him. Her eyes were filled with disgust and anger. Go back to the dungeon, was what the look she gave him said. Go back into the darkness where you belong. This look, reader, broke Roscuro's heart. Did you think that rats do not have hearts? Wrong. All living things have a heart, and the heart of any living thing can be broken. If the rat had not looked over his shoulder, perhaps his heart would not have broken. And it is possible then that I would not have a story to tell. But reader, he did look. So that's the end of chapter 21. And Roscuro is on his way back to the dungeon. And it looks like I have two more chapters with him before we meet a new character who I think you will really be interested in. So, thanks for listening.